easy question. No.
The other plan.
We have a mic coming to you. We are recording all of the sessions.
We have a mic for Mike.
A mic for Mike.
Yeah, Mike, a mic for Mike.
I have a problem with my boss. Are you going to record this and then put it up on the internet so I can get fired?
Yes. No. Everything is, then I was getting to that, everything is being recorded and we will be putting it up on the YouTube channel here for you, as well as all the slides that you'll see for the presentations and stuff. So keep in mind that there's somebody video recording everything.
You don't have a mic.
How, if we get to the end of the conference, if you clip it right, you could probably recreate the hangover with all the video footage.
Ooh.
How common is a DRBD two-node server setup in your experience?
I heard all but the very first portion. How
Common is a DRBD setup?
From a NAS perspective, it's relatively common. From a building it yourself perspective, it's extremely uncommon. If the question's about how often if you were to survey companies in the wild and see who had deployed DRBD as a storage failover solution, you would find that to be a very, very uncommon solution set. For those, what DRBD is the storage replication for Linux.
Everyone brace yourselves.
Jared?
Moderation button at the ready.
So I have a question for you as NTG as a whole, as an MSP or an overarching MSP. Well, I guess you guys aren't an MSP, an ITSP. How do you go about growing your business, finding new clients? It can never be organic growth. How would you recommend another company in this situation trying to grow their business in another market?
It kind of comes down to some of the same things that I had talked to vendors about. You really need to be out there and find social situations that you can be in, because honestly, we have gotten most of our clients. You only have 2 hours of open bar, I told you that. There is, just so as a side note, that if you go downstairs and to the left at the bottom of the stairs, there is a bar over in the corner. You can help yourself to go get more drink. I was only paying for 2 hours. So really, those social situations, Spice World was massive for us for years. Last year, it wasn't at all. It's not as much so, but those social situations, go out to the bar and drink with people. Join a club. Join Kiwanis. I know Mike Davis, he has his own MSP business and he's part of Rotary. And he has gotten quite a few clients from there. Do those things. Volunteer. You're gonna get businesses, because most of those types of things where you volunteer from are business owners. That's where you're gonna be looking for them. And every time you're out, you are your brand, period. Y'all think this is funny and I do this whole minion queen thing? You wanna know how many clients I've gotten doing this stupid thing? More than I would like to admit, because I have to wear the stupid crown.
Now, Jared, just so you understand, you gotta be able to delineate statements that she's made. You shouldn't necessarily wear a crown and a fluffy skirt.
No, I think that's the takeaway, Jared. That you should, yeah.
You can wear a kilt at least, maybe a little bit.
I'll get dressed.
But being recognizable, I mean, it really does make a difference. It makes a huge difference. Even in a bar when he's out playing, people, because they know me from my Facebook page and stuff, they see that. Your Facebook page, most of you should have probably recognized my Facebook page turned from talking about my kid and doing stuff, but now it's business. And I really have turned it into mostly business stuff.
I think one of the tough things is, and there's no simple answer to this, the cost of customer acquisition for an MSP is very high.
Yes.
Right, and it's a huge margin, and almost all the time the answer is you need to be where your clients are. If you want to be with manufacturing clients, you need to figure out where manufacturing clients congregate, which might be, maybe you get lucky and there's a manufacturing corporate, owners group that exists in your area. That can be a great place to meet those people. Those get a little bit tough because you have to figure out who those customers are before you meet them in most cases. So it takes a lot of identification. Whereas if you're dealing with more generic customers, it's harder to meet them, but there's a lot that you would not meet because you had no idea that there was some, half the businesses that you have in your area, you're never going to think about because they don't do something that's visible, you don't run across them as a consumer.
And I have a couple customers that took me years to get, literally years to get.
Chris Leslie.
Not really, that didn't take me that long. But there are customers that you just invest a lot of time with. Go out to lunch, take them out to lunch, take them out for a drink, because you know you're gonna get it, and when you get that, that's gonna be a good one for you to get. And it takes a lot of time investment. I would say there are a few of our customers, no lie, I put 50, 60 hours into before I get them as a customer.
And I think with the branding, one of the things that people don't necessarily realize is there's a lot with branding that you want to be recognizable, and it's a struggle with IT companies because people don't think about IT, and things in IT are very rarely standing out, right, to anyone who's not IT at least. So having a brand that people recognize and finding a way to get repetitively in front of people is a really big deal. And that's very hard to do, and it's very expensive to do. But that's where going to the bar, having Facebook pages, and things like that, going to community meetings for different types of businesses, and getting people to recognize you. Because going once, you're going to get nothing, right? You might get lucky, you're at the bar, someone's drunk, and they're like, I need an IT company. Oh, I got you, this guy at the bar. That can happen. It's pretty rare. It does happen. But most of the time, you need to be in front of people and have them be like, oh yeah, we talked before. Oh yeah, you made sense last time. Oh, I remember you now. And eventually it becomes this is the person I think of. And the reality is that a lot of people who are looking to start MSPs, I don't know if there's any here, but people watching the video, they often have this feeling that it's like, oh, you go out, you introduce yourself, and all these people who don't have IT are going to use you because they've been looking for IT. There's nobody looking for IT. It doesn't happen. Every company that is viable today has IT of some sort. Their solution has been solved. Now, that doesn't mean that it's solved in a great way. It doesn't mean that that they're happy. It doesn't mean that they will never want to switch. It doesn't mean that they'll never go out looking for an alternative, although they almost never will. But it does mean that you are never going into a greenfield customer situation unless you just happen to know someone who's starting up a new business and they want to hire you as their first IT. New companies have to happen, but normally you are dealing with displacing existing IT or filling a very recently created vacuum, which could be someone quit, someone retired, an MSP went under and no longer works for them, whatever. Those are out there, but most of the time you are getting in front of a company that has existing IT and getting them to think about you for those moments when, we'll just say their IT is busy, or out sick, or on holiday, or needs some advice, or needs some hand-holding, or has their DC suddenly go offline because their ESXi box goes down. Right, you want, or a very specialized project and need a set of skills, or just an amount of time. Some great work that we do get brought in just because people are busy and they can't be bothered to do 100 hours in one weekend project with their one local IT guy. He wouldn't sleep and he wouldn't get it done even close. So having a whole bunch of hands come in for a weekend and do a project, we're not bringing special skills, maybe project management, but what we're bringing is just bodies in some case. But those kind of things, you need people as an MSP to be thinking about you long before they need you, but you also need them to be remembering you.
So bottom line to that whole thing is that it's about relationships. It's about building relationships more than it is about selling business.
Yeah.
Because you can go out and you can introduce yourself to 1 million people and you're not going to get much of anything off it. It's the people that recognize you, remember you, you've been around, you've developed a relationship with them, and then when they need something, whose name comes up? Somebody they know.
Yep.
And you're now in that pool of somebody's they know, they can handle it, and that's where you get started.
So nobody knows this because I have the email, but last weekend we were all out at the local dive bar that's down the road from us. we introduced Maria to interesting food and bad beer. And talking,
She's running the camera.
Maggie, sorry. We're talking to somebody that I've seen out at the bar 9,000 times, and I sang a song and came off and he had to tell me how good I was, and he has his own business. He fixes air conditioners and something. I need a computer, I don't even have a computer. And I laughed at him. He goes, no, I'm not kidding, I don't have a computer. Well, why not? Well, because I don't know how to use one. He's a redneck, major redneck. But 10-minute conversation later, I have an email from him, because he does email from his phone, and he wants me to teach him how to run his business from a computer. And I literally have seen this guy out pretty much every weekend for years. Being in the bar, telling people what you do, it really makes a big difference.
And I would say, if I can add one thing, the whole branding thing, being recognized, like, you hear Scott, if you hear Ray 5, the statements just go right along hand in hand, and there are actually people who have met you, I know, who are like, Minion Queen, yeah, Danielle. Oh, that's her name.
I have people call, poor Jenny has gotten many calls for Minion Queen, because the person on the other end of the line doesn't actually know my name, and they feel really embarrassed because they're pretty sure that's not my name. I actually had somebody ask if that was my name yet.
And UPS.
And something that I think goes along with that, and I'm just going to go off on a tangent here because it's a cool topic, is the reason that relationships are so important with IT is because, to us, very often, as IT professionals, we think of ourselves as kind of the technology plumbers, right? And we're not. Our job, that's right. Our job is not actually technology. Our job is business. We're in the business of supporting information infrastructures for business. And that's what we do. Business people do business via relationships. They need people who understand their business. They need people who understand business. And the fact that we are on the information infrastructure component of that is relatively irrelevant. But one of the things that IT professionals often do wrong is see themselves as technologists, right? We might even describe ourselves that way. Like, what are you? Well, I'm a technologist, or I'm an information technologist, right? And we know those, IT is the word that we use for that all the time. But it's actually a really bad term. And being that it's actually business that we do, we're a business discipline. And if the correct answer to something we're doing is don't buy that, don't implement that, just take a notepad and write it down, right? Sometimes it's don't put it on a computer. That's not the right solution. We're those people. Our jobs are to help companies, businesses make business decisions around their information infrastructure. 99.99% of the time, that's going to be computers, it's going to be networks, it's going to be high tech, but it's not the technology that drives our value. It's our understanding and applicability to the business itself. And that is why we can't go out and sell ourselves like a technology product. If you go out and have the fastest CPU, you can go out and say, look, you have a CPU, I have a CPU, mine's faster, and I can show that it's worth the $50 difference. And a customer will go, I'll spend $50 for that. Easy. It doesn't require a relationship. But we as IT professionals, and especially as MSPs, we are a business component, and the businesses that we service have to see us not as a vendor, but as a partner. They need to see us as a part of their workflow in business. Now, some cases they're going to keep us more at arm's length, and we're like, well, you just handle calls for the help desk, and we handle everything else. You can understand less of the business in some cases, but most of the time we're there because at some level we're decision makers. And as decision makers, we are a business component for them, and we bring our value through the business applicability.
And reset passwords. And we reset passwords.
With the growth of the Mangolassi community, what's the expectation of vendor interaction with the community base as far as, I know you were talking about, hey, who's posted the most? Sure, I can get on there and post a bunch of kind of vendor-related swag stuff, which I know I would want to see that as a community member. I mean, what's the expectation of a vendor kind of interacting with the community base?
Easy question. So first of all, vendors can post on ML for absolutely free. Posting is never going to be a charge. There are other communities that do charge vendors because, well, you can pay the bill. Posting, absolutely free. Please post. Please post what you have. We have a what did you have for lunch thread. Feel free. We have a what game are you playing now? We have a what music are you listening now? What are you doing now? And everything from IT discussions happen in there to my kid's sick. There are very strange conversations that happen in there at all hours of the night. Yeah, Jared is redoing his kitchen. Yeah.
I'm driving home.
Yeah. I mean,
You always know what eggs in Jared's basket.
yes, he's always taking pictures of them. But those discussions get you involved in the community. People get to know you. People want to know you more because you are a personality. You aren't scale. So post. I mean, that really is the answer. Post. Now, vendors can get more involved. Obviously, we have advertising. And we kind of learned that just having that advertising doesn't work for vendors. Having the ad on the corner, they do help, obviously, but that's not the main driver. So there's who has ad blockers? Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't do you any good as a vendor to be necessarily advertising. Should you advertise? Yes, because that is getting your name in front of them. But that shouldn't be the only thing you're doing.
And it keeps the site up.
Yes, and it pays my bills. But there's going to be some new marketing things that I'm going to bring up and some more things I've been discussing with some other vendors to try to give you guys some more value. Because the vendors do need some more value. And doing things like what Scott and I are doing right here. Doing the AMA type thing with vendors we're finding works really, really well. So yes, there's going to be some things that I'm going to try to do to monetize some of that, but the posting itself will never be monetized.
Can I jump in on that real quick
Yeah.
before Scott goes off on whatever tangent?
I don't even know what it is yet.
As a community member who does post a lot, obviously, one of the things I like to see from the vendors, and one of the things I've liked about that is, I believe it's Know Before has been posting, and they've got their own blog, they've got their own big thing that they do, but every time they have a new big blog post, their vendor rep will come in, post a new thing in their in the self-promotion category. Initially, he was just dropping links. It's like, well, I'm not going to care to just go click on your link, because I don't know if I want to read it or not, I don't have time to read everything. So we had one of his threads, we went off and on about it, and we talked about it, and so now he posts like the first 2-3 paragraphs and his link to read the rest of it, and depending on what the subject is, maybe it's important to me, maybe it's not, I'll read it or not. But now I have the context, I have the content. And then some of the other, vendor reps, they'll pop in there when they see something's going on, or, one of us will throw their, scale tag out or whatever, because we know it might be something for that vendor, and the vendor will come in with feedback saying, yeah, our solution can do this. So the fact that they just pay attention and answer when they're called, to me as a community member, while as an ITSP similar to NTG, I don't have near the number of clients, but when I do have clients looking for the solution that I think might be right, or the community thinks, hey, this might be right for one of my clients, and then I need to get a better answer, me personally, I like not having to go to yet another place to find an email, to get a phone number from somebody, where instead somebody just happens to, Scale can do that for you, and at Scale can do that, boom, pops, and one of your reps gets the notification, you get it, and you call us. So, I mean, from the user point of view of it, not the ML point of view of it, that's a really big thing for me. And then I'll let Scott go.
And for
I don't have anything new to add, and Jared actually was parroting everything I was thinking before he got the mic. So, participation in the threads. There was a thread that we were talking about somebody that had a ESX problem, and I know that Scale is mentioned in there. It's a little surprising that we never saw a Scale rep actually drop in the thread, and even stick their head in there, which was a little unexpected. So just staying informed and trying to participate, especially when, as Jared said, your name is called, I guess. Yeah, I don't know if it was actually tagged or not. That's a big problem.
I'm not sure if they were tagged.
Resolved at this point.
One thing that for other vendors, Scale actually does one of the things I have talked to people when I know what they do. Scale actually takes the time to have a Scale tag in the community, and any vendor can do this. Scale manages their own. It's not a community thing. People may think that it is. But what they do is they, in Scale's case, and I recommend this for a lot of vendors, especially those that have any number of reps. If you're a really small vendor and you have one rep, you know, people just tag you most of the time. But people don't necessarily remember your name, especially if you're not a vendor who's talking in front of people all the time. Or not even the vendor, it's specifically if the rep is not in front of people all the time. And they have to remember who the person is and which company they're associated with. That's very difficult for people who are not in the community full time. It's difficult for me, and I'm in there a bit. What Scale does is Scale maintains a number of reps. David has an account, Craig has an account, Convoy has an account, and they have a Scale account as if it's a user. And what they do is they have an internal email that is a distribution list. And if anyone tags Scale, it doesn't go to a rep, it goes to the distribution list. So that they can everyone gets alerted that that's in the appropriate distribution list, right? And which might only be 2 people. But the important thing is, if the person that goes to changes, they can just change the distribution list or add somebody. And if someone's out, they can just make sure that someone's getting it. And if someone's busy, they know someone else saw it. And for the community, we just need to remember Scale. And it also lets people know we just tagged Scale. If we tagged a person, if we tagged Frank, Frank would be like, well, yep, it says my name. I hope they know where I work, right? And you can look that up in your profile, but it doesn't in any way get Scale out there, right? So having Scale, and so other vendors, right, I really recommend taking the time to do something like this. Get your account out there and make it identifiable so that people can tag you as a business. It's great from a community perspective, and then manage it on the back end in an intelligent way so that you can handle how it gets out to people, because you don't want someone to tag you and you not to respond because, the one rep was on vacation for a week, and that made our entire company unresponsive to a person who thought they had started a conversation with you, right? So that's a really simple thing to do. It costs no money. It takes 5 minutes, well, depending on how your internal email policies are. I don't know how hard it is to set up an account. For some vendors.
And if there's issues there, NTG will be happy to help you with that.
Yes.
Add fun needs.
Yeah, you've got one.
Yeah.
And so they're really, really handy. So that was just a little bit of a tangent, but specifically a way that vendors can improve that interaction very, very easily. But I think in general, what Jared said is really true. Vendors need to be regularly interactive, I think, because we want people to remember the vendor as being a participant. It's not about the advertising. Everybody loves that some of the vendors sponsor the community and make it happen, but being a vendor who's in there and participating, people see it as IT professionals who are taking the time to be involved in the same way that all of the non-vendors are, right? We care about the community, we care about each other in the community. It's our chance to help each other, to get to know each other, to work together, to create that peer relationship. And we see the vendors as peers like everyone else. And so having the vendors in there and participating creates that aspect of it for the vendors. And then when there's content, it's great for the vendors to go out and Mike, we need Mike. That vendors go out and create that content. I think Scale, for example, does a really good job with about once a week posting some actual content to the community and post the entire thing. There's a link somewhere if someone does want to follow it to the original, but all of the content is in the community, which is really nice if you're able to do that. But not getting too overboard. You don't want to get into that position where it feels like you're a salesperson, but it's absolutely fine for vendors to be like, we have a new product releasing, we want to tell people. Of course you want to talk about that, and you know what? We want to hear about that. We just don't want to hear all the pointless stuff. It's not about chatter, it's about having a good, valuable conversation. But just regular participation is a massive asset to the vendor relationship.
And I'll say that the vendors I've seen that typically do best are the ones who actually don't start, like when they first join, with trying to post about, like even if it's their product is a solution for someone's question, a lot of the ones who tend to start off establishing themselves in a social way before they're necessarily establishing themselves as a vendor, just become a friend in the community and then be like, oh, by the way, I also happen to sell this. usually tends to work out best because instead of people first seeing you as someone trying to sell them something, they just see you as who you are. Oh, and they also happen to do this. So it's really only a slight difference in perspective, but it makes an enormous difference in not only your general presence to the community, but also people identifying with you personally.
Well, once again, just like trying to sell yourself as an MSP, trying to sell yourself as a vendor to the IT community, again, it's all about relationships and establishing a relationship and becoming a friend with somebody who's a decision maker in a IT position is more valuable than throwing data sheets at people. So my favorite vendors are the ones that I know personally, who've taken the time to reach out to me and to develop, on some level, a friendship, even if, just a basic and fairly professional friendship. And so it doesn't feel like, oh, well, I gotta go out and find somebody to buy this product from. It's like, well, of course I'm gonna go with the guy that's my buddy. Yeah, exactly, that's how business works. Yeah, that thing's on.
Talking to the civil person.
Well, obviously, this was more for the community people that are here, and less for the vendors themselves, is actually to remember to use the tags. As Scott was mentioning, it's quite possible that the tag for scale wasn't used in that specific event I mentioned, so which you guys would have gotten a notification for that. So something for us to remember is to use those tags when we can, at Scott Allen Miller, excuse me, or at Dash Render, etc. So that's something to help you guys also become aware of those things. So.
And tag your posts, people.
Yes. It's on.
Well, it's a different topic. So, I know your experiences with the Goofy Red Hat. What is the IT industry missing?
The question is, what is the IT industry missing?
Proper use of labels for various job fields.
Yep, and proper tagging of threads. I think it's a loaded question. I think that the number one thing that I feel that the IT industry is missing is a uniform description of itself. Right? If we were to look at other industries that are more mature, and we can excuse IT for being a very young industry, but if we look at other industries that are closer to IT, right? Some like medical doctors are very far. We're nothing like doctors, so that it's hard to compare to them. But looking at things that are more like what we do, which is like civil engineering and architecture, they have a very codified world around their terminology, around certification, around professional behavior. Something we've talked about a bit in the community in the last couple of weeks is real estate agents, buyers and sellers agents, and their legal contractual obligations under those terms and disclosures that have to be done in those cases. And I think that IT as an industry lacks that, and absolutely job titles are a component of that, right? When you go into IT, if you're 15, and Mike was the most recent that I know of to have been 15 and gone through this kind of looking at IT as a future career. And he has the benefit of knowing people who have a lot of IT experience and a lot of different IT experience. And I'm assuming still from a I'm not in it much perspective yet, it looked really blurry and kind of what does an IT professional mean? What do? You can imagine and you can ask and get these like little vignettes of what different people do. And let me tell you, after 27 years in IT, when I look at different people and talk to them about what is, kind of what's your perspective of what you do in IT, and constantly learning about people who see IT completely different, not just than me, but from anyone I've ever spoken to before. Their idea of what IT is like is, you talk to 5 different people, and we can do it in this room. Just grab 5 people, isolate them, and one person will be like, well, my perspective, it's not necessarily that they're thinking that no one else is like this, right? But they'll be like, well, for me, a daily task is I administer Windows servers, and I do these kind of steps, and it varies day to day, but there's always within this relative confine of work. And you talk to the next person, well, my whole day is right there with customers, with users, and they're always customers in my mind, whether they're internal or not. And, you know, I help explain things to them, and I guide them through their use cases, and I help them use the applications or tweak their desktops, and I'm kind of a trainer. I teach users. And you talk to the next person. I spend my whole day in front of managers helping them understand how their business runs because they don't get it. I have to do their job for them. And you talk to another person and they're like, well, I'm a DevOps guy and I write scripts and everything just happens and I have no daily tasks. I just, you know, once in a while. And then you talk to someone else and they're like, I spend all my time running cables and I plug things in. And to each of those people, IT is a completely unrelated field than to the others. And you can talk to so many more people, and a DBA is going to see the world completely differently than a Linux administrator. And that's great. The field is big and it has variety and it's fun, but it's also very, very poorly defined. You talk to one person who's the director of IT and they make $800,000 a year. They have 5,000 reports and they spend their day doing paperwork and overseeing processes. And you talk to another person who has a director of IT, the same number of years of experience, and they make $30,000 a year, they have no reports, and they don't manage any people, and they spend all of their day managing desktops. This is a massive disparity for the same title. There's no other field that I've ever seen that has this kind of disparity, and it's not like artist. Well, I'm a painter, and I make $100 million a year because I'm Andy Warhol, and I'm a painter, and I make $50 a year because I paint in the New York subway and get tips, right? But that's the same job. You're both painting, you're doing the same tasks. One just is really good at selling it, right? So that's not the same kind of disparity. In the case of the director of IT scenario, each one is doing a completely unrelated job description to the other. One is managing people and they just happen to be in technology and it's about managing lots of managers. The other is fixing desktops, right? And so their job description, this one doesn't, you don't get better at this and become this. There's no path from one to the other, right? IT is consistently facing a problem where nobody is taking the time to codify what the industry actually is, what people do within it, what it looks like, what good looks like, what it should be done as. But all other fields that are more mature, such as electrical engineering or civil engineering or whatever, they eventually got codified and universities stepped in and built curricula and for the most part have built those industries in such a way that people, if you go to someone and say, I'm a civil engineer, and they'll be like, do you design roads, bridges, you know, they know a couple things that you do, and you're like, yeah, I'm actually a tunnel engineer. Oh, great, and you know what they do, and you can describe their job by saying, I'm a civil engineer who works on tunnels for highways. All that's covered. We can't do that in IT. No one here can in any simple way describe what they do to anyone else. We don't have that language. And even if we have the language, we may not know enough about the potential jobs that each of us do to relay that easily, right? For a lot of people, especially in the SMB space, what a DevOps person does might be so foreign that it's like a lecture is needed to get to the point where someone can tell you, so I'm a DevOps engineer. Oh, what's your daily job like? Well, let me tell you, and it becomes this big thing that's like educating someone all over again. Those things shouldn't happen. Someone going through and getting into IT, I understand that IT is a difficult field and people who are outside IT may just never understand it. We run the infrastructure of the world. What does that mean? But for those of us who are in the field, especially those of us with lots of experience, and especially for people who've gone through education programs, this should be absolutely standard. You should have a terminology. Jobs should be able to list job listings with titles that make sense. And part of the problem is that IT is a business discipline, it's not a technological one. A mechanical engineer, an architect, a civil engineer, these are all very technical fields. And so they can be very, you know, a civil engineer is determined by two factors, right? How much did it cost to build? Did the bridge fall down? That's it, right? Did it meet the requirements? The requirements are strict, and did they meet the budget? Done. IT never operates this way. IT is a business discipline. Businesses cannot be easily defined. You know, we always talk about the elevator pitch. Companies need to be able to explain what they do, and most companies can't. Because a company can't, IT can't, right? Because we operate in we need to be creative and find ways to make the business more money, or to save the business money, or to make it move faster, or whatever. We have all these really complex business drivers, and they aren't technical, so there's no way to say, and we see this all the time, right? And anybody see my article, things that drive me crazy. So when people say, well, it worked for me, right? This was a successful project. Really? You implemented the wrong solution at 3 times the price it should have been. Is that successful?
But
You've missed.
cheaper than quoting.
But it was 6 times cheaper than quoting. But this is a question, right? We don't even know what success is in IT. We don't have a common agreement for when someone is successful in implementing something. You know, well, the boss doesn't know that it's risky. Is that success? I managed to find another job before it all went up in flames. Is that success? I didn't get caught. The answer is yes. The answer is yes, and we now have an answer. But when we see people, and people will argue for really, really horrendous things, and say, well, sure, I may have wasted $1 million on a $50,000 project, but my boss thinks it was good. Therefore, it was successful. Well, what was the determination of success? Well, it was supposed to reduce risk. Did it? No, it raised risk. It was supposed to save money, because always in business, right? There's no exception to it should be cost effective, because we're in business. This is the context of IT. IT never exists without this context, which is an interesting thing. I have to say this. So I had a philosophical moment. Yeah, I've got the microphone here. I had a philosophical moment this week, and because I'm always thinking about kind of these things, and these discussions come up a lot. And so I propose to you this conundrum. The right answer in IT is always affordable. Think about that. Because the context of doing IT is always within the confines of the financial context of your business, the right answer is always within your financial capability. Because your financial capability is part of the defining factors of IT. Anyway, so I really feel, having thought about this a lot, and I know it was an off-the-cuff question, but if IT was approached in the same way, if it was codified in the same way as many other industries, we would suffer consequences, right? It would be much harder to innovate, it would be much harder to be creative, and we're a field that's much more creative than, say, civil engineering. And we need a lot of that flexibility to be able to handle, because business is about flexibility, right? You don't go to a new restaurant very often and say, they have nothing new to offer me, but they did it just a little bit better than everyone else. That could work, but that's really hard, right? Because everybody's trying to do it well, or at least half of everybody's trying to do it well. Some people are just trying to do it cheaply or whatever. But it's really rare that a business succeeds by simply doing what everyone else does and tweaking it a little bit better. Because if that was actually a way to make success, you could just start any business, anytime, anywhere, and win by being a little bit more effort in the situation.
So how does Microsoft survive?